By the end of next year, I will have published 3 books in 3 years. And yet, I feel like I spend a lot less time writing than a lot of other authors. I've never made an attempt to quantify it before. I could roughly calculate mentally how much time I spend writing, but how does that compare to my overall free time? How does that compare to the other things in my life? And so I wanted to make a video to look at how much time do I actually spend writing in a week, in a year, in order to create a book a year. And then of course there's the complication that I have a day job. I don't do this full time, which of course might be why I spend less time than other people doing this, but also I'm still able to put out a book a year. So how does that work? How does the math work out? A few caveats before we get started. I am going to go over to the computer. We've got some fun graphs I'm going to show you, but I just want to make sure that you understand kind of my context. So like I said, I do have a day job. I do have a dog. I am married. My marital status doesn't necessarily play into this, but the fact that I have a very supportive partner does. We do not have children. I don't have any chronic illnesses or disabilities that get in the way of me doing these things. I am neurodivergent, so please keep that in mind. Not everyone's daily life looks the same. So without further ado, let's go to the graphs. So let's dive into the numbers, shall we? I'll put the graphs up here on the screen, but I've got them on the computer in front of me. So if I look down here, that's why. The way that I calculated this was over the course of 3 sort of normal weeks for me. I tracked everything that I did, how I spent my time, and then I averaged it out across those 3 weeks. So I wasn't traveling for work. I wasn't on deadline mode, though I do have numbers for deadline mode coming up. I wasn't like going on holiday, anything like that. It was a very normal week, including weekends. Definitely the biggest chunk, like most humans, is sleep. And I have actually a bigger number than I think most people probably do. I have got 67 hours a week, which averages out to about 9.5 hours a night. And that is not necessarily how much I sleep every day. I'm the kind of person who needs a lot of sleep. I probably actually sleep like 8 to 8.5 hours a night. Any time that's spent in bed, like reading or like scrolling on social media, I've gotten other parts of the graph. Then we have the other big chunk, which is my day job, which is about 40 hours a week. And that's pretty consistent. That's my contracted hours. I work from 9 to 6 with a 1-hour break. And I'm pretty protective of keeping that number as exact as possible. I'm very productive when I'm at work, but I'm very protective of my personal time. Next up, we have Kirby, which is my wonderful dog, and I spend about 6 hours a week on Kirby stuff. We've got a few different things that we do with him. We've got about an hour a week that we spend at a training class. I usually do like maybe 2 of his walks a week, and usually my husband will do 3, and those are about 45 minutes to an hour each. And then over the weekends, we will usually do at least one thing with him, whether that is man trailing, which is something that we do, which is kind of like recreational search and rescue. It's not finding missing children anytime soon, but he enjoys it. Or sometimes we go to like meetups with other dogs and their parents. 6 hours of Kirby stuff a week. Then we have content creation. So this is content creation. I then have to go and edit this video. I had to make these graphs. I make TikTok videos. I post on Instagram. Any sort of social media and marketing, content creation, maintaining my website, all of that counts under this 9 hours. So that's like less than an hour and a half a day on average. Usually that's done massively in chunks, not regularly every single day. Then we have social life. Now, I am not the most social person. Most people, more of their free time will be spent on their social life. I've got 9 hours here, and that is not spending 9 hours a week with people. I factored into social life all the time I spend texting friends, all the time I spend on the phone with my family, obviously any time I spend out and about with friends. In those 3 weeks, I like went to a barbecue that one of my friends was having, that kind of thing. I didn't have like a date night or anything in there, but I would even factor that into this social life piece of the pie. Then I factored in cooking and eating, because to me, this is like a separate slot, because in my brain, it takes up a different piece of the pie. And I don't spend that much time on this. I have a lovely partner who does the vast majority of the cooking. He cooks pretty much all of our dinners, and we have leftovers for lunches. I make my breakfast every morning, and I will usually make like one other meal. And this amount of time is how much time I actively spend cooking and eating in like an active way. If I'm also doing something else, like if I'm eating and watching YouTube, for example, that will count in a section we're going to talk about in a minute. But if I'm sitting down and eating with my husband very intentionally, then that counts here. So yeah, I don't spend a lot of time on that. I would have to spend more time on that, obviously, if I had to do the shopping or I had to do more of the cooking, but I'm very fortunate. So that piece of the pie is quite small for me. Then I have just life admin, and this could be making medical appointments. It could be cleaning. It could be whatever. Again, very lucky that I have a very supportive husband who does more than his fair share of this. Our kind of philosophy is that the time that I'm spending writing, because that's adding to our income and adding to our lifestyle, I then am kind of working more than him. So he then picks up the slack around the house. Let me know if you want me to do another video about that, because we've had very intentional conversations about this. Then we have reading, and this is physical reading, not audiobooks, because I'm never just listening to an audiobook and just sitting there vibing. I think I did that for like an hour in these 3 weeks, and it is reflected in this reading chunk. But any audiobook time that I'm also doing something else, like cleaning, like cooking, like a really mundane part of my day job, that is counted within those hours. Reading is just sitting and reading. And I intentionally broke this out from the next category, which is going to be downtime, because they feel like two very different modes in my brain. So yeah, I spend about 8 hours a week reading, and that equates to an average of like 1 physical book a week, maybe 1.5, depending on the length of the book. And then, like I said, an hour or 2 of just like vibing with an audiobook. Then we have downtime, which is about 11 hours a week. And this could be just scrolling on my phone. It could be watching YouTube. I have a lot of downtime. Probably, I mean, it depends on how other people would break this out, because for other people, like, that downtime might be like their hobbies. Like, I don't watch a ton of TV shows and stuff like that. I mostly just watch YouTube videos. If I do watch TV, I tend to like put it on in the background while I'm doing boring stuff at work. So downtime is very much like my brain gets to turn off. Then we have hobbies, which is 5 hours. And this basically means D&D most of the time. I go to a gaming club every Friday, which is about 3 hours of my time. And then I've got 2 different games that happen kind of once a month each that are multiple hours at a time. And so those kind of even out to 5 hours a week on hobbies. But again, this is usually more heavily loaded in one week than another. And I'll just shuffle that around. Like my social life, for example, a lot of that is gaming. And so if I am gaming, I'm not doing something else for my social life. So it sort of gives and takes with that bucket quite a lot. And then finally, the last category that we have is writing. And during a normal period, I only write for about 7 hours a week. And I say about 7 hours a week. I'm pretty consistent with what hours these are. I usually write for 2 hours on a Monday evening, 1 hour on a Tuesday evening, 2 hours on a Wednesday evening, 1 hour on a Thursday evening, and 1 hour on a Friday evening. And it's pretty like specifically hours as well, because I'm using writing sprints with my writing group to do this stuff. 7 hours a week, or an average of an hour a day, though I'm not writing on weekends during a normal period, is probably less than some people would think based on my output. But that's just the way that it's worked out. It feels good to me. It feels like a good output for a normal time that doesn't make me feel burnt out, doesn't make it feel like it's draining any more energy than I have to give. And so as a normal habitual load, it feels right. So let's look at what this means in terms of percentages. As you can see, still vast majority is sleep, 40.9%. Then we've got 24.6% on the day job, 3.7% for Kirby, 5.5% for content creation, 5.5% for social life, 1.2% for cooking and eating, 2.5% for life admin, 4.9% for reading, 3.7% for downtime, 3.1% for hobbies, and 4.3% for writing. So I, on a normal week, only spend 4.3% of my time writing. But 4.3% doesn't sound like a lot, especially when a lot of it is taken up by sleep. So let's take a look at what that looks like in terms of my waking hours. It's 7.3% of my waking hours, 41.7% of which is taken up by my day job. So actually, let's not even factor in the day job. What does it look like when we talk about just free time? Free time being anything other than sleeping and being at my day job. Then when we break that out, we see that it's 12.5%, which of course is still less than reading. It's still less than social life. It's still less than content creation. But again, that feels like a good amount to me. Now, I promised you that we would look at deadline mode, because my ADHD brain knows 2 time frames: not now, which translates to not urgent, and now. Must be done immediately. So deadline mode is a very important motivator for me, and I used to get really stressed out by it, like, why do I do this to myself? But actually, as I've matured, I realized that it's actually just an important part of the way my brain works, and it's a wave that I need to ride. So let's look at what changes when we go into deadline mode. So the first thing that changes is my Kirby time actually goes up by about 2 hours a week. And this is because I will do more of his walks. So instead of doing 2 walks a week and then the stuff on weekends, I'll do 4 walks a week and then the stuff on weekends. This is because I'm spending so much more time like chained to my desk that I really just need to get out a little bit more. I need to touch grass. I need to move my body. Content creation typically stays about the same, though there have been a couple of times where I have just put a pause on content creation when I've been on deadline mode, which might be because I need the time. It also might be because it takes a similar energy to writing. My social life cuts down drastically to about 2 hours a week. And again, this includes all the time I'm spending texting people or FaceTiming with my family. I will become a little bit of a hermit during deadline mode, and that's okay. My cooking and eating goes down as well. I typically only make myself breakfast when I'm on deadline mode, and I will heat up my leftovers for lunch. And my husband will do definitely all of the cooking. I will not have really meal times with him because every single meal time I will be using to write, which we'll come to those hours in a second. Life admin goes down as well. I'm not taking on any of those projects. I'm not doing my taxes. I'm not, doing anything like that during deadline mode. Reading does also go down. I tend to probably overall cut my reading in half during deadline mode. So 4 hours a week versus 8 hours a week of just actual physical reading, but also my audiobook time will go down as well. And that's just because I'm spending less of my time doing those things where I would be multitasking to listen to an audiobook. I don't listen to audiobooks on my walks with Kirby. Downtime stays roughly the same. If anything, it probably goes up a little bit. Like I'll give content creation to have more downtime sometimes because I just need it because my brain is working so hard on my writing, but mostly it stays the same. Hobbies go down to 3 hours a week because I'll go to my gaming club, but I won't really be doing anything else. And then finally, writing during deadline mode goes to about 21 hours a week. So an average of 3 hours a day. And that does usually include weekends at that point. So that means I'm spending 34.4% of my free time during deadline mode writing. But how much of the year am I spending in deadline mode? For You've Got Chainmail, the book that's coming out in August. Don't forget to pre-order that, by the way. Links in the description as always. I spent about 2 months of that process in deadline mode. So 2 out of 12 months I was doing this. This means that I spend about 500 hours a year writing, which is about 5.7% of my overall time. And given that most years have about 3,200 hours of free time for me, if you exclude the sleeping and working hours, that means that throughout the year, not including travel, I'm spending about 15.8% of my free time writing. So is that more time or less time than you were expecting based on what I said and all the caveats I gave at the beginning? Be honest, let me know in the comments. I probably would have expected that like the percentages of my free time were higher, but that's mainly because I'm bad at math, because I feel like I had a pretty good understanding of how much time I was spending on writing. I'm not a numbers girly, I'm a words girly, but I tried my best for this video. I've got an updated writing routine video coming up soon, so if you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure that you're subscribe so that you don't miss that, because it'll be not similar but sort of complementary to what we've been talking about today. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.